All right, we're going to talk about population density in this video. Population density, by definition, is just the amount of people per square area of land. And now I know you're thinking, well, now I see why we're doing this video. And exactly, because you know that the word per is kind of like saying, you know, we're per one. So we're talking about people over square area. And we say square area because, I mean, generally in the U.S., we talk about area being square miles, but in Europe they talk about square kilometers, right? So we just talk about square areas. No matter where you're at, that works. All right, so let's see what we can do with this. Blank page and a real page. All right, so we're going to look at 6 different countries. You can see we have populations from 2010, and then we have area. In this case, we're talking about square miles because that's generally what we deal with. So first things first. How many people would be expected to live in Japan if the proportion of people to square miles were the same in Japan as in the U.S.? All right, now this is I like to call this a what-if problem, right? So we are comparing Japan to the U.S., and we are comparing people to square miles. So this is kind of, the labels. I like to label my proportions when I set them up. Now, the key here is they say, how many people would be expected to live in Japan? People in Japan. That's what we're trying to figure out. I understand that we know the actual amount of people who live in Japan, but we're saying, what if Japan was just like the U.S.? If they were just like the U.S. in terms of how many people per square mile, how many people would we expect to live in that country? So the other 3 pieces here we fill in. So Japan has 145,883 square miles. The U.S. has 309 million people and 3,717,811 square miles. Now we know from solving proportions, right, we're going to cross multiply and divide. When you do that, you end up with an X value of approximately 12 million. I throw the word million on there because, well, I should just circle this one. The U.S. had 309 million, so that means the Japanese people will also have million. And I rounded to the nearest million. So if Japan were exactly like the U.S. in terms of people per square mile, only 12 million people would live in Japan. Well, how does that compare to the actual people in Japan? Well, the actual is 128 million. So the expected, which is what we just found, is roughly 116 million less than the actual. And that's crazy. I mean, 12 million people versus 128 million. I mean, that's just a ridiculous amount of people. It really is. Okay. But that's what we call the what if, and you can use it to kind of just do some comparisons. All right. So which country listed in the table above has the largest number of people per square mile, and who has the smallest? Now, to do that, we need to actually fill in the population density. So remember from page 1, population density, I don't have much space on here, is the population divided by the square miles. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the U.S. together, okay? So the U.S. has 309 million over 3,717,811. Now you can do this in scientific notation, or you can say, I know that million is 6, so I'm going to just add 6 zeros, and that ends, then I have a standard form divided by standard form. You can do it either way. If your calculator has a millions button or an EE button and you know how to use it, you can do that. Either way, I end up with a population density for the U.S. at 83.1. Now that means for every square mile, so if you would create a square where each side is a mile long, roughly 83 people live within that mile. Now, obviously, New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, even Indianapolis, that population density is much higher than that because people, live in these big buildings. They live on top of each other. But you go out in the country, like where my parents live, in a square mile, there might be 12 people. So it kind of, go out to Montana, I'm sure there's less than that. So that's kind of the basic idea. So, okay, I want you to go ahead. Actually, let's go ahead and do Mexico together as well, just to kind of get an idea. So Mexico has 112 million. Again, I'm just going to add 6 zeros for the population. The square mile, 761,506. I divide and round to the nearest tenth, and I end up with 141 and 1/10. So in Mexico, you can see roughly 64 more people per square mile than in the U.S. Okay, now I want you to hit pause, do the other 4 countries, come back, check your work. And let's go ahead and round to the nearest tenth for all of them. Okay, so you went back, you did your division, people divided by square miles, and we can see, hopefully decently clearly, that who has the largest number? Well, that would be Japan. 877 people per square mile. That's a lot, right? But notice they don't have a whole lot of space, right? They're an island. Okay, which country has the smallest number of people? Well, that would be Iceland. Where Iceland is actually green and Greenland is icy. I don't know. I think they misnamed those a little bit. But anyway, Iceland only has 8 people per square mile. They don't have a lot of space, but they don't have a lot of people. And I heard Icelandic is really hard to pick up, so if you're going to move there, you might have trouble with the language. It's just what I've heard. All right, so there's finding population density. And then what would it mean for 2 countries to be proportional in terms of their population and area of land? Now think about what that means. If we're talking about in terms of population and area of land, so square area. So if they're proportional, meaning these 2 pieces are the same, well, think about what this represents. Population over square area is population density. So if 2 countries are proportional in terms of population area of land, that means they have the same population density. So they don't have to have the same population, they don't have to have the same square area, but that ratio would be the same. So they might both reduce to 83.1. That doesn't mean they both have the same information as the U.S., but when they would reduce it, it would come out to be the same. That's what it means if 2 countries are proportional in terms of their area and land. Population and area of land, whatever.